Welcome to the Honest Healing Podcast, real talk for cycle breakers. I'm your host, Katie Delimon. If you're ready to speak up, set boundaries, heal your nervous system, and build better relationships, you're in the right place. Because you don't need to be perfect to heal. You just need to be honest. Let's go. Welcome to episode 13 of the Honest Healing Podcast, Connection After Conflict, Finding the Open Window. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more about me storytelling, reflection, a lesson I've learned, some tools, and more so integration. This is not going to be a how-to or a lesson on what to do in order to have connection after conflict or repair after rupture. Today's episode is more about me being inspired by a very real moment between me and my husband, Kenny. The day I locked our keys in the RV after Burning Man. It turned into quite a metaphor for our relationship, for repair, and finding an open window when a door won't budge. And in today's episode, I also want to answer a question from my audience. Somebody asked, how do you navigate with your partner triggering and confusing childhood trauma with you? I'll get into that later, but first I want to go into the RV meltdown. So let me first just paint a picture. A few weeks ago, me and my husband went to Burning Man. You can Google it, and it is called a festival, but I like to think of it more as a city being built and then broken down for a week. It's out in the middle of nowhere in the desert in Nevada, and we drove an RV there. Most people do. Coming from Australia, you've got a 24-hour flight over to the west coast of America. We picked up our RV in LA, which is probably about at least a 15-hour drive to Burning Man. We also did a stop at Walmart to get all of our supplies because you can't buy anything or sell anything at Burning Man, so you have to bring everything you need for that week. All your water, all your food, all your supplies. 7 hours in Walmart. Then we spent another 7 hours waiting in line just to get into Burning Man. And now it's always a wait to get in because it's 80,000 people trying to get in through basically a few lines. Anyways, then we had 8 days of just absolute bliss. But I'm not going to lie, I will definitely say my nervous system got dysregulated quite a bit at Burning Man. There was a lot of dancing, dehydration, riding bikes, minimal sleep. Zero showers. I mean, there was a shower in the RV, but it's actually not a proper shower. It's just basically trickling water. So you're able to wash your body off, but I wasn't able to wash my hair or get a real nice shower. Anyways, I'm not complaining. I'm just setting the scene. That was for about 8 days. When we were leaving, we weren't actually sure how long it was going to take us to get out because some people said, it can take you another 7 or 8 hours just to get out of Burning Man, depending on when you leave, because depending on how many people are leaving at that time, right? So we needed to get back to in LA at a certain time because we also had a flight to Nicaragua out of LA. So we were kind of on this tight little schedule. We ended up leaving at a great time. We only sat in traffic, I think, for 2 hours. We're driving down the highway. I think we'd been driving for probably 7, 8, 9 hours at this point. And we're making really good time. Everything's great. We just coming off of this high, but also really exhausted. And I could feel getting like patches in my throat and like, because there's so much dust, I had like a clogs, I had congestion going on. And anyways, your body is exhausted at this point, and I thought it was a great idea for us to stop at a truck stop, get a really good night's sleep, and then wake up in the morning, get a hotel. And I booked one on the way. So I was like, oh, let's just get a hotel tomorrow and just have the whole day there. And then we can catch our flight at midnight to Nicaragua and feel a little bit more refreshed. Great plan. We literally get to this truck stop at 8 o'clock at night and we're like almost on a high because everything's going great. It's amazing. And I don't know why, but I believe this was a moment of grace, a grace from God. We both decided that we wanted to use the bathroom at the truck stop instead of using the bathroom in RV, which I don't know why. The bathroom in the RV was perfectly fine. It didn't smell and it didn't ever get smelly. So I don't know why we didn't want to use the bathroom in there. I thought I wanted to change it to some sweatpants because some reason I thought it was cold out. It actually wasn't cold out. It was quite warm. And when he left, I thought he said I took the keys. He said I left the keys. You probably know where this story is going. So I go meet him at the bathroom, don't even use the bathroom yet. And he's like, "You have the keys?" I was like, "No, you have the keys." And my whole body just went white. It's 8 o'clock at night. We're in the middle of nowhere in California. It's Sunday night before a public holiday in America. I'm like, how are we going to get the keys? There's no we don't have our phones, we don't have our wallets, nothing. I locked everything in there, not just the keys, everything. We had roadside assistance. We'd paid extra money for insurance for roadside assistance in case anything happened, but that is out the door when you don't have the phone number for roadside assistance or your policy number. I didn't have any of that. So, first things first, I always ask for help. I went to this truck driver. He spoke no English whatsoever. His phone was just Spanish. Tried to use it, couldn't, he had to leave. Thankfully, we noticed there were these burners next to us. There was two young guys who just went to Burning Man. We knew they were there. They had bikes on the back. Their RV was taped up and they had this huge RV and it was full of dust. So we knew they were burners. Got to talking, their RV had broken down. I asked to use the guy's phone, started calling. Nobody would come out. I had one guy say he would come out, but he needed payment before he came. And I had no way of getting a credit card. I didn't have anything on me. And I literally had nobody to call. I'm like, I can't get a credit card. This is crazy. The guy wouldn't come. I kept calling. We were out in the middle of nowhere. And get this, the place we were called, Independence, California. Independence, California. And the closest city, I think, was like Fresno. So in the boonies, nobody would come out. I was calling tow trucks. I was calling every locksmith in the area. Nobody would come. 3 hours I'm on the phone. 3 hours. Finally, Kenny was like, we got to break a window. So we broke a window. Wasn't, too fond of this idea, but we literally had no other way in. So we broke a window. And we still had another 4 hour drive back to LA when we got up in the morning. So we're both not really happy with ourselves, not really happy with the situation. But what do I do when I get in that situation? I shut down. I avoid, I stop talking very much, I show no emotion, I give very short answers. Some might say it's quite bitchy and mean. I just think it's extremely short and shut down and avoidant. That's just what I do. Kenny is a little bit more on, he gets quite fight or flight, and I go into shutdown. So if you know anything about the nervous system, he's more fight or flight, and I'm definitely more shutdown and freeze. Anyways, we go to bed, we wake up, we've got that 4 hour drive to LA. We're driving down the highway and the duct tape keeps falling off because we're going like 70, 80 miles an hour on a highway with a huge RV. Duct tape keeps flying off, shattered glass keeps flying. We have to keep pulling off on the side of the road, which is quite dangerous, quite stressful. We stopped at a few places to find duct tape and maybe potentially a new window for the RV. Nothing was open because it was a public holiday. We kept pulling over at these places, not getting anywhere, losing time. We get back to the RV drop off, and the guy who rented us the RV, his name was Noble. We actually called the RV Noble, which gave us like a sense of peace because the guy was so chill. He was like, "Yeah, that's all right. I'm just going to have to charge him." We're like, "Yeah, totally. We get it. That's what we expected." And at the end of the drop off at the RV, he's like, "Look, guys, I didn't want to tell you this, but I think it's going to make for a better story." And he goes over to the side window, takes the tape off, and slides the door or slides the window open. There was an open window the entire time. Me and Kenny were just like, no, no, like, oh my God, like you have no idea how much time and energy we have essentially wasted into this idea that we couldn't get into the RV. And so I think this is a beautiful metaphor on how when you think that there is no doors open, you always have the option to break a window, but there might just be another window open. And we're still both pretty annoyed at the situation. Like, I think when Noble showed us the window, it actually made Kenny more upset because he was so annoyed at himself because he couldn't find that. He spent like an hour on that window, and he even had the other guys from the RV come over and they're like, no, no, you can't open that. See, it's locked there. It's locked there. And so, anyways, we're not feeling so great, but we jumped in an Uber, we get to the hotel. We only had a few hours at this point. So I think we like took a swim at the pool, we had a shower, and we laid in bed for a little bit, but we didn't get to sleep because we were afraid of going to sleep and not waking up for our flight. So we just relaxed as much as we could in the few hours, and then we got our stuff together, got to the airport. It was a midnight flight, so it was a red eye. We landed in Nicaragua at 8 a.m. It was like a 6 or 7 hour flight. We had a layover in El Salvador. And we get to the airport. The airport in Nicaragua has absolutely no Wi Fi, and you can't buy electronic SIM cards for Nicaragua. I don't know why. So Kenny's trying to run around trying to find a regular SIM because the taxi people who were supposed to meet us at the taxi place weren't there, and they're like 45 minutes late. And we're like, what the heck? So while Kenny's trying to find a physical SIM, I just go up to this American guy who has a surfboard and I'm like, hey, can I use your phone? And I called the taxi company. They're like, oh, sorry, he's going to be another hour. This means he's like 2 hours late. And he was like, you can either wait or we can try to find somebody else. I was like, well, if you could find somebody else, that'd be great because it's another 4 hour drive to our accommodation. So, anyways, they find this other guy. They're all speaking in Spanish. Like, nobody really speaks that great of English. One guy drives us. He doesn't speak any English, and he drops us off at this supermarket, and this other guy picks us up, and then we drive to our accommodation, which is super remote. And I mean, the roads aren't even paved. They're like literally they're cutting roads out of the mountain. It's so like remote. And we're like, okay, let's hope that they're taking us to the right place. We ended up getting there. It was absolutely gorgeous, divine, big villa on the ocean. We're like, oh, this is amazing. But we both were just exhausted and tired. And we got into it. And it was just basically like, look, you haven't been in a good mood. You haven't been in a good mood, blah, 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 blah. And just going at it. And we're like, okay, whatever we're doing right now is not working. Okay, let's go for a swim. You go for a surf. Let's go get some food and then we'll come back and talk. I'm all about striking when the iron is cold. And it's not excusing your poor behavior, like, oh, you haven't slept, you haven't eaten right, you haven't showered right. And you're not excusing poor behavior by taking note on what could also affect you and your mood and your attitude and the way you show up, but finding a way that you can come back together and talk in a mature, grounded way, that is very important. So before I get into how Kenny and I found connection after conflict, I want to go back to that question of how do you navigate with your partner, triggering and confusing childhood trauma with you? I want to share with you a post from Terry Real, who is an amazing relationship expert. He said, you didn't just marry a person. You married your unfinished business. You married the wounds you've never named, the roles you played in your family, the survival strategies that worked when you were 8, but are now wrecking your adult relationship. You think you were upset because your partner didn't text back or because they got defensive or because they left the keys in the RV. But under that surface complaint is something older and deeper. It's you don't see me, you don't care. That's not just about them, that's history speaking. And here's the kicker, your partner married their unfinished business too. Now you've got two adaptive children trying to love each other. But here's the hopeful part. Yes, we all marry our unfinished business, but we also marry the next step in our psychological development. We think a good relationship keeps us out of the mud. It doesn't. It puts us back into the mud. A good relationship is one where once you are knee deep in that old wound you swore you'd never feel again, something different happens. You speak up instead of shutting down. You stay instead of running. You remember love. That's what's called healing. I'm going to say that again. You speak up instead of shutting down. You stay instead of running. And you remember love. So I want to go back to that question. We all marry somebody who is going to trigger and confuse our childhood trauma with us. You do it as well. And I don't know anybody who is evolved enough to say that they are perfect and that they never trigger and confuse childhood trauma with their partner. And if they do, I would say they are definitely a narcissist and a sociopath, because it's impossible to live your entire life not triggering and confusing your childhood trauma with, and this doesn't have to be your romantic partner. This could be your friendship. This could be somebody you work with. This could be just your partner. You don't have to be married to this person. So instead of thinking that your partner needs to change and fix and not confuse and not be triggered, I would really be taking that back on myself and looking at my own patterns and beliefs that I'm triggering and confusing, and where I'm not regulating my own nervous system, where I'm going back into my 8-year-old self. That is what I did when it came to those keys getting locked in the RV. I'm a master at shutting down and avoiding, but I'm calling it maturity, right? That is my ego saying I'm above because I'm just not saying anything. I'm just not reacting, right? That is not the appropriate way to come together at connection after conflict. So my nervous system response is more shutdown and Kenny's is more fight or flight. It doesn't mean one is better than worse. It's just recognizing where you both are at and how to come back to a more regulated state. So after we got into it, I said, look, let's just go to the beach, grab dinner and talk about it. We came back together, and I love using nonviolent communication because it's super simple. Look it up, NVC, nonviolent communication. You say what happened, how it made you feel, what need didn't get met, because there's always a need that didn't get met, and how your needs can get met in the future. It's super simple and you don't have to overcomplicate it. So I told Kenny what I needed in the future to feel safe, and then I asked Kenny how his needs can get met if a similar situation pops up. I said, what could I say or do that could help you feel more grounded or safe? He's like, I was thinking about this out in the surf, and I just need you to say, it's us against the problem, babe. It's us against the problem. You're not the problem. I'm not the problem. We are a team and we're going to work together against the problem, and that no problem should ever be bigger and greater than us. And I thought that was absolutely beautiful. It inspired us to get a well, it's our fourth matching tattoo now. So when we were in California on the last day, we got U is greater than P. This is a representation of us is greater than the problem. You are greater than the problem. And it also spells up, because you're only going to go upwards and onwards if you look at it that way. There's no going down or no going back if you value yourself and the team more than a problem. You are greater than the problem. Us is greater than the problem. Up. You is greater than the problem. Okay? This is how we connected after conflict and how we shared our vulnerability, asked for what we needed, and we came together with a plan. We haven't gotten into it since then. So I have no idea if I say to him, hey, babe, it's us against the problem, if he's going to be able to calm down after his trigger. I don't know. But look, it's a game plan. And when the moment comes up next time, I'm going to try to execute it, and I'm going to do my best to say it, and I'm going to do my best to speak up, and I'm going to do my best not to avoid and shut down. And hopefully he does his best on what he said he was willing to bring to the table. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. The only thing you can base things on is what is true in this very moment, not for, well, if that happens again, he's not going to do that. And he's just going to freak out even more. When we assume that we know how somebody's already going to react, even if we do know and we are right, the fact that we're assuming the worst out of somebody is part of the problem. Now, like I said, this episode is not going to be about all the tips and tricks on how to reconnect after conflict, because look, there are a million books on it. And I can tell you right now, here's a few steps you can do. Pause before you problem solve. So take a breath, regulate, check your body before your words come out. Two, name what's really happening. So instead of talking about the problem, talking about how you're feeling, owning your own part. Yes, I was snappy because I was running on fumes. And again, it's not about excusing your behavior. It's about admitting, okay, where am I at right now? Why might I be feeling this way? And then reestablish a game plan, the us, create a team plan. And then you can connect. Maybe it's touch, maybe it's humor, maybe it's gratitude. Of course, these things work after conflict. We know this, but why don't we do it? Because you can read all the books, and I love the Gottmans. If you want to get into relational therapy, the Gottmans are amazing. Terry Real's amazing. The Gottmans have a book they recently published called Fight Right. I think it's the art of creating connection after conflict. They are amazing. I listen to all the podcasts, I read all the books, but you know what? All of that stuff goes out the door when it's actual reality. Why is that? People are too concerned about how the other person feels and way too concerned about making the us part better before making the you part better. And this is the big thing that I always reiterate with Kenny. You take care and look after yourself first, and then we come together. It's the oxygen mask, because if you are not your happy, healthy, regulated self, you trying to save somebody or save a relationship while you're dysregulated is not going to help anybody. If you don't put that oxygen mask on yourself, you're not going to be able to save your child. So often I see, especially women, focus way more on the other person and their relationship instead of themselves, because they think that that's selfish, and they say, oh, but I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then you look at their bodies and they are not fine, because your body is speaking to you through symptoms. Symptoms are not problems, they're prompts, they're messages, they're telling you where you're not aligned. And so, like I said, this is not an episode where I'm teaching or preaching. I am sharing from a real, authentic place on my relationship is not perfect. I went on a beautiful 3 week holiday, but there are still stressors and challenges. And that wasn't even the biggest stressor. There was another time right after that. So we, have an amazing time in Nicaragua. We leave our accommodation at 10 a.m. in Nicaragua. Our flight's not till 5 p.m. But again, we weren't sure about the roads because they're so bad. And it was like a 4 hour drive. So we leave super early. We get to the airport super early. Me and Kenny are literally just chilling, reading our books, having fun, blah, blah, blah. Like an hour before the flight, these people come to us and they're like, are you going to LA? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, you might want to go stand in that line because they've just canceled the flight and there's no other flights out. So like you got to figure out what to do. You guys are really calm and like chill. And so I go up, I wait in line because I'm like, look, there's nothing we can do. All we can do is just whatever the options are, we take them. We get up to the counter and the person at the counter is like, hey, yeah, sorry, the flight's canceled. We're not going to get you into LA till, a day or two from now. And I'm like, that's not going to work for us because we have an international flight tomorrow that we need to catch. They're like, well, we have a flight leaving to Miami in like an hour or two. If you want to go all the way back down through customs, go get your bags and get on that flight. Go now before the gate closes. So we went all the way back down through customs, back to the front desk where we checked in like 7 hours ago because we were so early. And I literally couldn't get words out. I was so stressed. But Kenny was like, he was just like, it's all right. Everything's going to get through. And we had to check our bags off of that flight and then check them onto the Miami flight. Anyways, we get onto the Miami flight. I have a best friend in Miami. I ended up going to him, seeing him for a few hours. We landed at like midnight. We got to his house at 1 a.m., maybe later, 1:30. And then I booked us a flight for 7 a.m. We left at 4:30 in the morning. So we were there for 3.5 hours. I think we got maybe 30, 40 minutes of sleep. And mind you, while I'm trying to book these flights for the 7 a.m. Miami to LA, our credit cards are not working because it keeps sending a pin to our cell phones, but the cell phone message isn't going through because we're on electronic SIM on the US. And so I ended up having to use my friend's credit card to book our tickets and then to PayPal him. One little hurdle after another. And we caught the 7 a.m. flight, got to LA, had again like 10 hours in a hotel to just relax. And then we caught our flight to Australia. So another very big stressful thing happened, but we didn't get into any sort of argument. Everything worked out perfect. Yeah, we ended up spending another $1,300 to book flights, but we're like, look, we'll try to claim it to travel insurance. If we don't get it back, we don't get it. The only thing you ever lose is money, and money is just control. This idea that we actually have control over things beyond our own emotions and our body is absolutely absurd. And if you're going to value money over your relationships and your health, and mind you, not everybody has $1,300 to just throw away. We don't have $1,300 to throw away, but desperate times, desperate measures, you got to do what you got to do. And if you have to put that on a credit card and then you pay that back, month to month, that's what you have to do. I know what it's like to live on credit cards. There's always a way to find money. Valuing your relationships over stressful situations. It's you against the problem, it's us against the problem. Team, you come together. This is how you regulate your nervous system because you co regulate. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. We co regulate as animals. So if you are in a relationship where that person is always stressed and overwhelmed and shutting down and going through their dysregulated states all the time, you might be doing all the regulation tools, tips, tricks, reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, but you are definitely going to be affected by whoever you're spending your most time with and your relationship. And if you're constantly going into these stressful states because you're never feeling safe, your nervous system isn't going to stay regulated. So, long story short, tying it back, when it feels like the doors are locked, maybe there's still a window open. Maybe connection is the window and the broken window. Okay. This is how we break childhood trauma and generational trauma. Most people think that our childhood trauma is some big obvious thing, or our generational trauma are big obvious forms of suffering. But really, it's just subtle patterns we repeat that feel normal. Things like holding on to resentment, being busy all the time, family secrets, hidden shame, and not sharing our emotions. Now, I know when we get to adulthood, there are so many people out there who are going to justify their resentment. They're going to justify why they're always busy. But Katie, I've got 2 jobs. I'm going to school full time and I have 3 kids at home. I am always busy and I have a reason for that. You can justify all your unhelpful behavior you want, but that is what's going to keep you stuck until you put that mirror on yourself and you take full responsibility for how you're showing up and how you're not cleaning up your side of the street. And if you feel like your side of the street is super clean, yet you're still just allowing other people to dump their shit onto yours, then that's a problem, again, with yourself, with your own boundaries. Now, but unfortunately, the reason why we justify this as an adult is because it became so normal and normalized. We live in a society that has normalized dysfunction and toxicity. And I'm just going to give you a few examples. So, most of our culture ties performance to love. So, we learn that approval is intimacy. To me, intimacy is about being at your worst and being seen, is being so emotionally vulnerable, it's almost cringe. That to me is intimacy. We learn as a society, especially in families, that emotions are not safe, they're suppressed because our caregivers couldn't handle our big emotions because they couldn't handle their own. And another very toxic, dysfunctional example is masking conflict with positivity. I love you, Australia, but you definitely do this way too often. We have learned that arguments should not happen in relationships. And this is the biggest crock of bullshit out there. Couples who say they don't fight have no emotional intimacy, period. And if that's what you want in life, cool. Have a relationship with no emotional intimacy and no fight. Sure, be my guest. I, on the other hand, do not want to be in that type of relationship because I know that arguments, challenges are not something to be feared, but they show you how you're going to work together as a team. The health of a relationship has absolutely nothing to do with the good times or how much fun or love, sexual time you have together. It's about when times get tough. It's about the challenges, how you fight. The quality of your relationships are the quality of your fighting. That's it. That is it, people. And if you don't fight right, if you don't find that connection after conflict, if you don't repair after rupture, your relationship is going to feel unsafe and you are just constantly going to be flooded with cortisol and your body's going to be showing up with a lot of symptoms. I heard somebody say one time, yeah, well, the trust was broken many, many years ago. And I'm like, well, that was years ago. If trust was broken years ago and you're still holding on to that, again, this is not a them problem, it's a you. You're holding on to a resentment and you're justifying it. Well, they did something wrong to me, so I'm going to hold on to that feeling. Do you know how many times me and Kenny have broken trust with each other? A few times, not many times, but it is 100% happened. I will absolutely tell you the truth. It has happened for the both of us. But do you think we brought that mistrust into our future? No, 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 no. It happened. We dealt with it. Then we showed each other through our actions and behaviors that we can be trustworthy. And so that trust was rebuilt very quickly. And I would never say, oh, I don't trust Kenny. He's done things that it broke my trust in that moment at that time, but he has shown me so many other times that he can be trustworthy. Now, does that mean that he is never going to do something to break my trust again? I have no clue. I don't know what the future holds. The point I'm making about the trust is that the connection after conflict should come soon after the conflict. You may need a few hours, a few minutes, or whatever it is to calm and cool down and down regulate if you've been maybe in that fight or flight, or maybe you feel like you're going into that shutdown. You may need a little bit of space. But if it's days and weeks and months and years that you're holding on to these things that happened in the past, that's an issue. Connection after conflict should come soon after the conflict. Now, I want to actually go into a little synchronicity series element because I did this in the first few podcasts and I really love doing this because I love synchronicities. Kenny actually found this. He was looking at his videos of Burning Man and he was watching a video when we were in line waiting for 7 hours and he was just videoing the line and he just like kind of took the camera and all of a sudden he's watching one of these videos and the guy's phone who I used for 3 hours walks past the video on our screen. 80,000 people go to Burning Man, okay? 80,000 people. The fact that this guy just randomly walks across our screen, I know is a message from God or the universe or the power or one, your angels, your spirit guide, whatever you want to call it thing, the power that is bigger than you. That is a sign saying, hey, there are no coinkydinks, there are no accidents, nothing is happening against you or to make your life horrible or bad luck. I don't believe in bad luck or bad situations. Oh, they just have such bad luck. Everything bad just always happens to that. I don't believe in that whatsoever. I think it is 100% perspective. And even though me and Kenny lost quite a bit of money breaking that window, it has brought us so much closer, so much more vulnerable and loving towards each other. And I think it's given us now another way to deal with our challenges and create more connection after conflict and to have more lightness in our relationship and to realize that, we are a team and that's what matters more than anything in this world. So, if you liked this sort of storytelling, insight, reflection podcast, let me know. I have plenty of other stories in the bank. And if it's not something that you enjoyed, I will probably be able to tell by the numbers. But next week, I'm back to having guests on, and I've got so many great guests lined up. You won't want to miss it. Bye, everyone. And if you still struggle with connection after conflict, check out my website, www.katiedelimon.com, and book in a free strategy call with me. I do one-to-one coaching and I help people create a deeper connection with themselves so that they just naturally have better relationships with their partners, their family members, their friends, their work colleagues. It happens when you heal yourself and your nervous system, when you build more awareness, more boundaries, and more compassion. But we didn't learn this stuff at school. And so I love teaching this stuff and I love guiding people through this work. If this speaks to you, check out my free strategy call on my website, www.katiedelmon.com. If you want to hear more about my wild ride from mindlessness to mindfulness, you can always check out my debut memoir, Trust Flames. Buy it on Amazon or my website as well, www.katiedelmon.com.